Hello, my friend. Welcome to Bible study clips with Dr. Chinedu. And I tell you, lately I have fallen in love with the book of Ruth. I've read it before, but just is giving me a new and fresh perspective on certain things. There's so much nuggets that we can gather from this chapter in the Bible, in the Old Testament. So I'm going to briefly read the very first few verses, and we're just gonna gather some things that we can learn out of these passages. So I'm going to read Ruth chapter 1, verses 1 to 14. And it says, Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his two sons. Okay. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his two sons Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. And they came into a country of Moab and continued there. Okay, I'm reading from the KJV, by the way. And then verse 3 says, And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. Okay, and she was left, and her two sons. So here it is. Elimelech, basically there was a famine in Judah, so he took his family, took his wife, took his two sons, and they moved into another land, another place called Moab. So it came to pass, and verse 3 says, Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and he died, and she was left and her two sons. And then moving on, verse 4, and they took them wives, that's her two sons, and they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpha, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelled there about 10 years. So they moved there. Father dies, and then the sons take wives, Orpha and Ruth, and they lived there 10 years. And verse 5 says, And Mahlon and Chilion died. These were Naomi's two sons. They also died. Her husband dies, and her two sons die. Yeah, tragedy. And and the woman was left. That's the woman, Naomi, was left of her two sons and her husband. And that ought to make you a little saddened when you lose your husband, and then now you lose your two sons. Verse 6 says, Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. Right. So they leave. Elimelech takes Naomi, his wife, and their two sons. They leave Judah and they move to Moab. And so they live there. They left because of a famine, right? So now they've lived here, and Naomi's husband died and two sons died. And while she's there, she now hears God is feeding his people. There's no longer famine, so she's going back to her land, right? So let me stop there for a second. One of the things that I think just real off the bat we can pick up from reading these few verses is that there was a famine, right, in Judah, and so it caused Elimelech to leave there and to go find, go somewhere else where there's no famine, just to explore. So sometimes we can say, sometimes a famine calls for a change. It calls for a shift. Even looking at our lives, application can be, if you are in a place where it now appears to be a famine, there's a lack, there's something, there's a shift. Perhaps it's time for a shift. Perhaps God is telling you something that it's time to move, to do something else. So this is something that we can gather from this glimpse of just reading this first few passages. But after they moved to Moab, they lived there 10 years or more. And Naomi's husband and two sons died, and now she's left with her daughters-in-law. And she now hears, now there's bread, right? She wants to go back home. And so this is where the story gets really interesting. So verse 7, Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her two daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return unto the land of Judah, where they left before. And Naomi said unto her daughters-in-law, Go return each to your mother's house. You don't have to go with me back to Judah, because now my two sons are dead. Your husbands are dead. There's no need to come with me. And then she blesses them. She says, the Lord deal kindly with you as ye have dealt with the dead. And with the dead, obviously their husbands, and as they have been kind to her as well. So verse 9, she says, the Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you in the house of her husband. So she's departing. I can just feel it. She's departing, and she's telling them goodbye, and you don't have to come with me anymore. Just go. God will bless you in your new husband. Hopefully you're young enough to remarry and move on with your life. And so this is a moment where, and it says, then she kissed them and they lifted up and their voices and wept. So this was a weeping moment, just a really touchy moment. Verse 10, and they said unto her, Naomi, surely we will return with thee unto thy people. They wanted to go with her to her people. And Naomi said, turn again, my daughters. Why will ye go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb, that they may be your husband? She's like, there's no need to come with me. Like, I have nothing to offer you at this point. I don't have any more sons for you to marry. And then you're going to look at verse 12. She says, turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. And if I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband also tonight, and should bear sons, are you gonna wait for them to grow up and marry? Like, I have nothing to offer you. Keep going. Just go ahead and live your life. In verse 13, we see she asked them, would you tarry for them till they were grown? Even if I was married and had a son tonight, are you gonna wait for them to grow old for you to marry? Like, that's an impossible thing to think of. Would ye stay for them from having husbands? Nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes, that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. So she's grieving. She's like, the hand of the Lord is gone against me. But then she says something really interesting. She says, for it grieveth me for your sakes, that the hand of the Lord is gone out against me. So she's seeing, because the hand of the Lord is gone out against her, she's seeing this tragedy. And of course, it is definitely a tragedy to lose your husband and your two sons. And so she's grieving for her daughters-in-law, because what sadness, what tragedy that has happened to her has also affected them in a negative way. So she just also hurting for them. And so it is important to think, another insight that you can gather here is that, when something happens to you, for good or for bad, there are people connected to you, that it's not just you. It's not just about you. It's never just about you. No man is an island. It's always going to also affect the people connected to you. And that could be for good. Think about, even when God blesses you, it is to use you as a channel to be a blessing to other people. So remember that. So she sees that this tragedy that has happened to her obviously has also affected and impacted her daughters-in-law in a negative way. So she's weeping for them. But then verse 14, and then they lift up their voices up again after she tells them to, you don't have to come with me. And they lifted up their voices and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law. So she decided to go ahead and depart, kissed Naomi bye-bye, and went on to her people. But verse 14 says, but Ruth clave unto her. Ruth did not want to leave Naomi. She clave unto Naomi. At this point, she made up her mind. She was going to go with Naomi. She wasn't going to go back to her people. And we're going to continue on the next video because it gets really interesting how God blessed Ruth because of her decision. And of course, Orpah didn't do anything wrong, but Ruth clave to Naomi. And we find out that it wasn't just about cleaving to Naomi because of anything, but there was something that she wanted, that Naomi's God now has become her desire. She wanted to serve the same God that Naomi served, that she wanted to be with the people that Naomi's people. And we're going to read that further in the next few verses on our next continued session of this Bible study. So I think the quick takeaway for this session of the Bible study chapter 1, verses 1 to 14 is that, number one, when there is a famine in the land or in your situation, I think God is speaking to you. Maybe it is time to shift. It is time to take another step. It is time to make the next move. Prayerfully ask God what you ought to do. And then the second thing that we can gather from here is that we're just not living in an isolation. There are people that are attached to us. And so what you do, your decisions, good or bad, are going to positively or negatively impact someone else. It may not even be your decision. The things that happen to you are also going to affect other people. So keeping that in mind, let's live in light of there are people that we are influencing. There are people that are connected to us. If we want to do our part, we want to live out on purpose, God's purpose for us, so that the people that are connected to us can also get what they need, that the blessings will flow as well. So until next time, we'll continue this Bible study on our next session. Till next time, blessings. Bye-bye.